Hi, Seth. Welcome to the show.
Jason, thanks for having me. Nice to see you.
Seth, when it comes to life insurance, you're really the expert in that area. And I just had a bunch of questions I hope you can get answer for us.
I will do my best.
So, obviously, one of the big issues about life insurance, well, any type of insurance, is people have to fill out applications. During that time period, where happens when there's situations of fraud that people kind of lie about their health situation? Maybe they're lying that they're not a smoker and they actually are. What's the results of those types of situations?
Luckily we don't see a lot of it, that type of fraud, but it does happen. And as you can imagine, there's a lot of premium at stake, a lot of death benefit at stake. So people try and game the system whenever they can, if possible. So, I mean, if there's misrepresentation on an application, someone says they're a non-smoker and they actually are, or someone says they don't take any prescription medications and they actually do. Right. More often than not, during the underwriting process, the carriers will find, those misrepresentations through blood work, through prescription checks, through whatever else. Not that it's not a big deal, but the carriers will call the clients out on it and say, hey, look, you said you weren't a smoker. We find nicotine in your system. We'll still offer you the policy, but it's going to be at a higher rate, at a smoker rate, or we found you're on these prescription meds. You're still insurable, but we're going to charge you a little more if you're still interested.
Okay, what if it's like an egregious thing that they don't find out until afterwards? There was this like huge medical condition. Maybe they're using someone else's medical reports. Somehow it slips by the carrier. And then they find out afterwards upon their death of this specific thing that was not disclosed. What happens in that situation?
So there is a 2-year contestability period.
So
within the first 2 years of a carrier issuing a policy, if they find any misrepresentation or fraud on the application, they have the right to go back to the client and cancel the policy, refund any premiums that were paid, rather than paying that claim. A lot of policies these days have language in it that'll even go further and just say if any point during the life of that policy they find material misrepresentation that really was instrumental in the premature death of someone, that they will not be liable to pay the death benefit and can just, again, refund the premiums.
I see. And that's something, where do they actually challenge it? In court, or was there a specific place where they would bring the challenge?
It's in the contractual language that they're allowed to do that. I would guess that the beneficiaries of that policy would take the carrier to court to challenge it.
I see. And then what about a situation, we see on, like, hopefully never in real life, but, we see in the movies a lot. There's a person who buys a spouse, very big life insurance policy. Then they hire someone to try to murder them, right? What happens in that hypothetical situation?
I mean, luckily that's very infrequent. Outside of the whole carrier-client relationship, assuming that the beneficiaries of the policy are caught, they'd be charged with murder and attempting to profit from a murder. If they were convicted, the beneficiaries cannot profit from that. So the death benefit, if they were the primary beneficiary, the death benefit would then go to a contingent beneficiary if that was named in the contract. And if there wasn't a contingent beneficiary named, it would be payable to the estate of the insured.
Yeah, and we actually see a lot of that outside of insurance too, right? Like people trying to write books. And they can't benefit from the book rights and all those things because there is this situation where you shouldn't be benefiting from such a horrible crime that you committed or hired someone else to commit. So I think that makes a ton of sense. And it sounds like it also extends to the insurance world.
Yep, absolutely.
So I did want to touch upon one kind of sad topic with you that unfortunately does kind of happen. What happens when an individual buys a life insurance policy for themselves and within that 2 years, that person commits suicide?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. Unfortunately, that is very sad, and it does happen. but there is a 2-year suicide clause in every life insurance policy that states that if within the first 2 years of the contract, the insured does commit suicide, that there is no death benefit payable. The carrier will refund any premiums versus paying the death benefit out. And, I think that the thinking is that, if someone is really, in such bad emotional straits that they had this planned out, that, if 2 years down the road, they're still thinking about it. Hopefully they've had time, they've had counseling, in the meantime.
Yeah, it's such a difficult thing with so many people struggling with mental health. That is a very interesting topic in the insurance world, but it's a very, very sad topic for families and beyond. It's obviously a very concerning thing. So now to kind of go back to just advising your client, when you speak to your client, obviously you want to avoid all these situations, right? Don't murder your wife. Don't do that. But but joking aside, when it comes to advising your client how to truthfully answer these questions, like what things do you tell your client to kind of give them the guidance to say, look, you want to be as honest as possible on these policies?
Correct. You don't want to make any misrepresentations, but you also don't want to volunteer information that they don't ask for, which is important. We also know we represent all the major carriers in the industry, and we know some carriers are going to be very sensitive to some things and not others. Some don't care if you smoke cigars. They don't consider you a smoker for those reasons. Other carriers, if you smoke one cigar a year, you're considered as bad as someone who smokes a pack of cigarettes a day. We also, if you're declined or rated on a life insurance policy, that is going to be in your records forever with something called the MIB, the Medical Information Bureau. Yep. So with our clients, we always recommend that my firm collects all their medical records, orders the exams, has all the lab results. We review it first before we send it out to carriers. And when we do, we just go out to carriers and say, hypothetically, if this person applied for life insurance, what type of offer would you make them? And if the client was going to get declined or highly rated, since it was an informal application, not a formal application, we can just withdraw it and there's never a formal record of that going forward. So that's, something we recommend to all our clients. Worst thing you can do when you're buying life insurance is submit a formal application to a life insurance carrier without knowing the offer in advance.
Yeah, when you were talking about the medical information, does carriers request like mental health stuff too or not?
They do. That absolutely. In general, they're going to require records from any physician you've seen in the past 5 years.
Okay. So if it was like, say, if there was something that they were younger and in their childhood that they had to see a therapist, that's not something that would show up anymore.
Not unless within the past 5 years they've had a conversation with any medical professional about that. If they saw their primary care physician last year and mentioned something about that mental health counseling 10 years ago, right, then all of a sudden the carrier knows about it. But
right. Okay. Well, that makes a ton of sense. Now, Seth, when should people be calling you? When's the best time to talk to you about life insurance?
If they have any questions. I mean, that's it. A big part of our practice is reviewing neglected and underperforming policies, which unfortunately there are a lot of out there these days, but we are truly life insurance specialists. We don't do any type of broad financial planning, no investment management. We also work on a fee basis. So there's no incentive for us to recommend a policy that isn't in their best interest, because we can work on a fee basis as well. And a client can actually take our recommendation to someone else they know and purchase the insurance from them.
Yeah, that's what I like about you guys. There's different types of people who are agents, and if the person is motivated and has essentially a bias towards a particular company, they're going to say this is the best thing for you. And you don't know because you're not doing your own research. You're relying on this individual. And with you guys just being kind of an unbiased person to give strictly advice. That's just such a powerful thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, we're very proud of the way we run our business. Thanks for asking.
Yeah, Seth, the other thing too, I think people think that they need life insurance only when they get older. But, a lot of people with young kids and coming into families, that's a really important time in their lives to get life insurance.
Yeah, I mean, usually, it's when you have few assets and a lot of liabilities, upcoming education expenses,
Right.
mortgages, and your savings aren't there yet, that life insurance may be most important. And maybe that need will go down over time as you build up your assets and your liabilities go down. So certainly for survivor income for younger families, it's really important. And a lot of our clients have built up significant wealth already and use life insurance as a tool to fund their estate tax liability.
So Seth, to the hardest part of our conversation, what are those two skiing pictures behind you? Is that you on the slope?
Yeah. I wish. No, those are actually some oil paintings of gold medal winners back at the Oslo and Cortina Olympics in the 50s.
Wow, that's awesome. Are you looking forward to the Winter Olympics?
Can't wait. It'll be interesting. We're there at Beijing this year.
I can't remember. I can't believe it's so
think.
quick now that we kind of smushed 2 years.
I know. 2 Olympics in a year. It's fun. But can't wait for ski season.
Sounds good. Thank you for coming on, Seth.
Thanks for having me.